I know people are saying, like Gary Neville, that finishing second will be a massive achievement for Arsenal, but let's not write their obituary yet. This is One-to-One with Simon Jordan. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course, keep leaving the questions in the comment section below. But let's get on with this week's show. Well, I think the players know what they need to do. They need to get a result at the Etihad and get themselves back on track. In 2 games, Arsenal have allowed, I think that's doing the other side a discredit because the other sides have fought back in, but Arsenal have had control of games and allowed it to be wrestled away from them, shall we say. Liverpool, for significant periods of that game, battered Arsenal, yet they still managed to get a result. Some would say that being 2-0 up should be a home run, but Liverpool were in one of those veins of form on that game that they can bring out during the course of a season, because Liverpool aren't a bad side. They've just lost a degree of momentum and they need some changes, but Arsenal managed to hang on to a game that they might have lost previously. Obviously, West Ham is going to be a disappointment because West Ham are where they are in the league. Everyone will accept that West Ham have underachieved and they've managed to pull a result out against Arsenal, and Arsenal have snatched probably defeat from the jaws of victory in that game, and with penalty misses to compound the problem. I don't think they need words of advice. I think they just need to believe in themselves. Arteta has done a remarkable job this season. The team is functioning at a very high level. I know people are saying, like Gary Neville, that finishing second will be a massive achievement for Arsenal, but let's not write their obituary yet. If they go to the Etihad and get a result, I still think they will win the league, or can win the league, because if they get a result at the Etihad, which is not a loss, then necessarily it's not back completely in Man City's hands. It still remains potentially in Arsenal's. So with that in mind, I think Arsenal don't go from being a side that can start a game and dominate it to a side that is not capable of continuing on its journey to potentially win the league because of a couple of adverse results. Adverse being in front in games. So I would simply make sure the players continue to believe in themselves. This is a very strong group of players that are very much in line with the strategy of their manager and in line with the whole fabric of the football club. From when I went to see them against Man City when they got beaten and were a little bit outclassed in that game in the second half, the whole feeling of that football club is one of unity and unison. So the most important thing is to coin the much overused expression that all the players will use from taking one game at a time. Well, the real dynamic in this instance is they've got to believe in themselves and stick together and understand that they've got to trust the process. They're capable, more than capable, of going to the Etihad and getting a result. Obviously Man City are in a vein of form now, but that notwithstanding, Arsenal will pose a very different challenge to Man City than some of the other sides they've played recently. So what it does is it brings up an intriguing clash. All roads lead to the Etihad. I hope they do. I hope they go and get a result. I want Arsenal to win the league, not because I'm hugely an Arsenal fan, but because I want to see different teams winning the Premier League. I don't particularly want to see Man City dominating, albeit whatever Man City do on the pitch is brilliant football, and I want to see them win the Champions League. And if they're the best team in England, they should win the league. But I think most important for Arsenal is to keep believing. They're there. They're still captains of their own ship. They still have control of their own destiny. Go and get a result at the Etihad and compound the naysayers, or confound them, sorry, not compound, confound the naysayers by going up there and getting a result which most people now, even the betting companies, are suggesting that Man City are going to win this league. Not done yet, Arsenal. Look, in this parallel universe where we're creating this hypothetical scenario where it were me that had the financial means that Todd Bowley has at his disposal, and it were me looking at Chelsea, well, depends. The culture of that football club has been built upon a very different basis than lots of football clubs. It's almost been built upon the mentality that I would have had in the first place, which Abramovich built upon, which is managers are their shelf life is as good as their results. And Abramovich's expectations were to build a football club that won every season, and the moment it veered off its axis a little bit, then managers, irrespective of their reputation and previous deeds, were fired. And I don't have a problem with that, because I think managers and football affords too many mediocre outcomes when people are given all the tools to do their job. Now, going to the situation where Abramovich has gone, the club's come out of a situation where the owner's been sanctioned, forced to sell it, and there's a raft of changes that require to be implemented. The old management team go out, because that's what happens, irrespective of what people say about football knowledge and retaining it. Atypically, when a manager leaves a football club, out goes all his backroom staff. And often is the case, when you own a football club, you bring in your own people. You should try and keep some of the orthodoxy around and some of the conventional thinking that's made the football club something you want to acquire. I don't disagree with Bowley taking Tuchel out for reasons that may well find the light of day from someone else's mouth rather than mine, because it's not my gift, but suffice to say, Tuchel didn't operate the way that an employee should operate with his employers, and you can make it a football situation if you want about solely what's on the pitch, but in the end, what happens off the pitch will end up on the pitch. So I make him right for that. I never felt that Potter was the right solution. Taking someone out of Brighton with all the expectations that Brighton have and the modus of operandi that they have, it's very different to a team like Chelsea that can't afford to distill and decant. They need to hit the ground running. So I would have looked probably for a proven manager that would have been able to embrace the particular pressures that go with huge expectation, huge scale and huge expenditure and big players. And I would have looked in that direction. So would I have spent the money that Bowley spent? No. Would I have chased it the way he did? Probably no. But then you got someone coming in for the first time round, and if I look back at myself on a different scale in my first season at Crystal Palace, there's no doubt you lead with your chin and your checkbook. There's no doubt that you make mistakes. Everybody that takes on a new task and takes on a new business, and specifically one like a football club that has so many different facets to it, are going to make mistakes. I wouldn't have brought Frank Lampard back in. I would have gone and got a manager, irrespective of what the conventional wisdom is, after I've decided to remove Potter from the equation, because I put somebody into a position that it's like saying getting a one-legged man to run 100 metres in 10 seconds, and when he can't do it because it's not physically possible, blaming him for it. So there was no point castigating Potter. It was the wrong decision. I would have gone and got Nagelsmann, if that's who I wanted. I would have gone and got Enrique, if that's who I wanted. And I would have got them now. And I would have got them in the building, got them to understand the fabric of the football club on a season that's virtually a write-off. Made sure they understood the culture of the players they've got there, because the culture of these players seems to be wrong. And then when they started next season, they would have cleared the decks. They would have known what the football club felt like inside, not what it looked like outside in the perception, not what the players are on paper and what you might have seen playing against teams that you've managed, but actually the culture and character of these players. So when the season starts next year, my new guy would have done all his legwork, would have done all his homework, would have had it on the ground experience, so that when we hit the start of next season, we didn't have another debacle. We didn't have another situation where we make further problems for myself. I wouldn't be running around saying that we're going to beat Real Madrid 3-0. And I wouldn't necessarily be getting involved in arguments with fans that 7, 8, 9 months ago would have been thanking you for saving the club. But that's all because I know what I have had to go through myself. In my first season, I could not have given myself these lessons. So with all that to factor in, those are the ways that I would have handled it. But it's very easy to say when you're not in that position. But I think probably Bowley needs to take stock. And I would also not allow the media to portray me the way they're portraying him, which is a know-nothing Yank, because I suspect he's anything but that. Ten Hag should win every game that's in front of him. That's his job. That's the responsibility of a Man United manager. If you're in this opportunity, and as I've said before, a good fight isn't one you put up, a good fight is one you win. And he has an opportunity to win the FA Cup, or certainly get to an FA Cup final. He has an opportunity to correct the 2-goal that they gave away to Sevilla in the second half of that game when they had control of it, and some will say the substitutions exhibited a certain characteristic that he needs to remove, which is ultimately assuming games are won. But I don't think that's a fair analysis. I think they're there to be won. Man United now are in the business of trying to win things again. It's not this, whether it's a misquote, but it certainly was an observation. It's not the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer era where winning things isn't paramount. It's absolutely paramount. Man United's job, its raison d'etre, certainly since the existence of the Premier League, is to be a winning machine. That means you win the League Cup, you win the FA Cup, you win the Europa League. Liverpool have done it previously with their treble. United have got the squad. The competitions that are in front of them are there to be won. Of course, there's challenges in those with other sides that are in those competitions that will potentially provide jeopardy for Man United to get to a final, and possibly better sides than Man United. But on one-off FA Cup finals, we've seen over the history of years, games can be won by the lesser side. And Man United, if they end up playing Man City, are the lesser side, no doubt about that. But the Europa League, and I don't believe in this this culture of rotating players to be able to prioritise, you win games to build momentum. And Ten Hag looks and feels to me, despite my observations at the beginning of the season about his suit not fitting him, again, people only want to take the quote rather than understand the meaning, the man didn't look strident. He didn't look like he occupied the space that a Man United manager should occupy in terms of the way that he pushed himself forward and the stridency of his outlook. But then again, if you're getting beat 4 by Brentford and 4 by Brighton probably, or whatever those scores were, it was certainly 4 by Brentford, then you're going to find yourself in a slightly weaker position. But he's, to me, is a leader. So with that in mind, I expect him to lead his teams into the best opportunity to win all the games that are in front of them. So I don't want to hear, or neither should we have to hear, that Man United need to prioritise certain things to be able to achieve outcomes. Win. That's Man United's job. I think Tottenham Hotspur is a good job. I think Daniel Levy is not quite the way he's painted. I think there are lots of things that Daniel could do better, and maybe sometimes the accusation that he saves a pound to lose a fiver could be levied at him. There's no ambition, I don't think, from Tottenham to build the best stadium and the best training ground and not have a very good side, because what would be the point of that? Of course, over a period of time, you will have the opportunity to whip Daniel with the don't win anything stick. But to go to the point of managing Tottenham Hotspur, it's one of the biggest clubs in this country. It's in and amongst the biggest clubs in Europe in terms of its opportunity and its draw. Hence the reason it was able to draw Mourinho, hence the reason it was able to draw Conte. Maybe drawing them at the wrong time was the problem, because no doubt these were managers that had clearly won many things, and you would have anticipated they might be able to change the culture of this football club and sort of inject more substance into Spurs at the business end of opportunities. But that's only assuming if these two guys came in with the right outlook, the right disposition and the right mentality, and I think both of them didn't, for differing reasons. And yes, of course, the common denominator can be Daniel, and yes, of course, Daniel has to accept his part in all of this. But so do the players. And when you see the players on Saturday's performance against Bournemouth, and some of the attitudes on the pitch and some of the dispositions from some of those players, I keep using the word disposition because it's a fundamental part of how footballers approach the game, isn't right. And so with that in mind, going to the genesis of the question, they won't have a problem recruiting a decent manager. This isn't the days when they're running around trying to interview Jacques Santini that I had interviewed previously at Crystal Palace in the league below them. This is Tottenham Hotspur knocking on the door of being inside the top 4. They should be inside the top 4 with the resource they've got available and with the opportunities that Conte and Mourinho have been given. And of course, being in the top 4 last year, they should have kicked on. But I think there's a load of managers that could take this on. I know that they're talking about Vincent Kompany and so on and so forth, but I think there are a raft of managers. The only challenge is there are a few other football clubs out there, like their West London rivals, Chelsea, that might be fishing in the same pond that will be a bigger draw, albeit Chelsea are going to finish 10th and Tottenham are maybe finishing 5th, 4th or 6th. So I don't think we should think about the reality of what an awful poison chalice this is. They've got to make the right decision now, because clearly it's bubbling up under the surface. The sort of feeling towards Daniel Levy and Joe Lewis is not great from certain sections of the fan base. The Harry Kane question and circle needs to be squared as to whether he signs another contract. But I do feel there needs to be a bit of a clean out there. A few of the people that have probably now seen their better days. But without pulling a name off the top of my head, because they're there to be seen, they would ideally be fishing in the same pond as Chelsea with Nagelsmann and Enrique. I've always felt, and I said it to Daniel last time I saw him, the guy that would have worked best for him, and of course it's easy to say, would have been Jurgen Klopp. Because Jurgen Klopp works for Liverpool under similar circumstances that managers work under at Tottenham. Yeah, he managed to galvanise a club. He managed to get a group of players that subscribed to the view that he had and built a team, albeit not this season, but in previous seasons, that has A1 leagues, B1 Champions Leagues, but C being a remarkably competitive, farewell team. And at the same time, as never complaining or explaining what he hasn't got and seeming to constantly be in line with FSG, which have a similar approach to Tottenham. If you look at the dynamics of FSG's positioning, they're like Daniel Levy, campaigning for sustainability. They, like Daniel Levy, were one of the 2 football clubs that wanted to furlough their staff, because if we look at the economics of football, yet Klopp was the factor. And of course, if Tottenham could have got someone like Klopp, or can get someone like Klopp that can galvanise, drag Daniel kicking and screaming into places that he may not want to go, at the same time as getting a fan base and the players on side. So a combination of Arteta and Klopp and all these perfect foils that one can easily reference now is where Daniel has to be looking. But I think Tottenham still remains a great job, and there should be more belief from Tottenham fans in this football club, because it wasn't so long ago, it wasn't 20 years ago that Tottenham were achieving nothing and financially in difficult positions. And I know that things should evolve and things should get better. And it shouldn't be, you can reference the past to explain the poor performances of the present, but it's also right to get context and balance. So I think it's a big job and they will get a big manager. Right, that's your lot for this week's edition of One to One. Don't forget to let me know your views on Arsenal and their race to the title or not, on Todd Boehly and his never-ending seeming crisis at Chelsea, and of course Ten Hag and the ambitions of Man United and the opportunities for a treble. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to keep leaving the questions in the comment section below, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time.